The front door closed without ceremony. No guards followed him in. No engines hummed outside. The mansion in Sombukdong stood too quiet for a house that usually breathed with movement. Marble floors swallowed the sound of his shoes. The chandelier lights were off, leaving only the low glow from the corridor lamps, the kind meant for people who expected to leave again soon. Park Jun-suk did not. His left hand trembled as he loosened his coat. Not from fatigue. From something colder. The ache in his ribs reminded him he'd taken longer than planned at the port in Incheon. Too many delays. Too many faces pretending not to watch him. He stepped forward. That was when the voice came. Stay silent. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. The maid stood near the staircase, half hidden by shadow. She wore the same plain black uniform she always did. Sleeves buttoned. Hair tied back. Hands clasped in front of her like she was waiting for instructions. But her eyes were not on him. They were in the hallway behind him. He froze. Not because a maid spoke out of turn. Because she had never spoken to him at all. For 3 years, she cleaned his house without a word beyond formal greetings. She arrived before dawn. Left before dusk. No questions. No curiosity. No fear. And now she was telling him to stay silent. A sound creaked upstairs. Slow. Careful. He felt the shift immediately. The air changed. The house no longer belonged to him. Don't turn around, the maid said calmly. If they hear your shoes, it's over. His jaw tightened. His mind reached for control out of habit. Schedules. Names. Options. Nothing came. Another sound. Metal brushed wood. Someone was opening a door. He stood still, breath shallow, every instinct screaming violence, yet his body refused to move. Not because he was weak. Because he knew this house. And something was wrong in a way that planning could not fix. The maid's voice softened, just slightly. They didn't expect you this late. That was when he understood. This was not a robbery. This was waiting. His pulse slowed. Not from relief. From clarity. The kind that comes when survival replaces pride. He realized he had not seen his driver. Or his chief of security. Or his younger cousin, the one who never left the house after midnight. The maid took one step closer, careful not to let her shoes scrape. 3 hours earlier, the mansion had been alive. Cameras active. Guards rotating. Phones are ringing with updates from Gangnam, Busan, and the docks. His name still meant obedience then. Men moved when he spoke. Deals stalled when he paused. Now, none of his devices vibrated. Upstairs, a muffled voice spoke. Low. Confident. The kind that assumed success before it arrived. The maid's posture did not shift. No panic. No hesitation. Only urgency. Jun-suk's fingers curled slowly at his sides. The pain in his ribs sharpened with each shallow breath. He had walked into his own house expecting silence. He had not expected silence with intention. Another footstep. Closer now. The maid's gaze finally met his. Her eyes held no pity. Only instruction. There are 3 upstairs, she whispered. 2 in the study. 1 near your bedroom. Jun-suk's fingers curled tighter. How do you know? He asked without sound, barely shaping the words. She didn't answer. Instead, she reached into the pocket of her apron and slid something across the floor with her foot. A phone. Not his. The screen was cracked. The wallpaper unfamiliar. Messages filled the display. Short. Efficient. Korean slang he recognized immediately. Orders. Timelines. Photos. One of them showed the back of his head. Taken earlier that evening. At the port. Another showed the inside of this very hallway. His pulse slowed. Not from relief. From clarity. This betrayal had been planned long before tonight. He glanced at the maid. She had not moved. Her hands remained steady. No trembling. No fear. Just the kind of calm that comes from knowing exactly what comes next. "Who sent this?" he mouthed. She hesitated. Then said the name. A name he had trusted. A name he had protected. A name he had given too much access to, because loyalty had once felt certain. The house shifted again. Footsteps moved toward the stairs. The maid stepped closer. Close enough now that he noticed something else. Her posture had not changed in 3 years. Always composed. Always peripheral. But now he saw it differently. She had never been overlooked. She had chosen to be invisible. "You can't fight them," she said. "Not tonight." He wanted to argue. Instinct demanded it. But his ribs reminded him otherwise. His left hand still trembled. And the men upstairs had numbers. "There's a passage behind the wine cellar," she said. "You sealed it years ago. They don't know it exists." He stared at her. "How do you know that?" She looked away. "Because I cleaned it." The answer hung between them. Simple. Impossible to dismiss. Another footstep. Closer. He turned, silently, and followed her toward the kitchen, his mind racing not with panic, but with a single question that would not leave him alone. Why would a maid risk this? She moved through the corridor without hesitation. No wasted motion. No second guessing. She knew the house better than he did. They reached the kitchen. She pressed her palm against the wall near the wine cellar door. A panel shifted. Stone slid aside. The opening was narrow. Dark. It smelled of dust and old concrete. Before he stepped through, she stopped him with a raised hand. "This is where I stop," she said. "No," he whispered. "You're coming with me." She shook her head. "They know me as furniture. If I disappear, they'll search. And if they find you?" Her expression did not change. "They won't." Something in her tone made him pause. "Why help me?" he asked. She didn't answer. "Not fully." "Because everyone else already chose," she said quietly. Upstairs, a door opened. Voices carried down the stairwell. The maid's hand moved to the panel. Jun-suk stepped into the passage. The stone slid back into place. Darkness swallowed him. And above, someone touched the stair rail. The darkness was absolute. Jun-suk pressed his back against cold stone and forced his breathing to slow. The passage was narrower than he remembered. Or perhaps he had changed. Years of authority had made him forget what survival felt like. He moved forward, hands against the walls, feet testing each step before committing weight. The concrete beneath his shoes was uneven. Old construction. The kind built when his name meant nothing and escape routes mattered more than reputation. The air smelled of mildew and abandonment. He had sealed this passage 7 years ago. After consolidation. After the house became a fortress instead of a hideout. There had been no need for back doors when the front entrance commanded respect. But someone had cleaned it. Someone had known. His mind circled back to the maid. 3 years of silence. 3 years of invisibility. And tonight, she had moved with precision that only preparation could produce. The passage curved left. His shoulder brushed brick. Pain flared in his ribs, sharp enough to stop him. He steadied himself, waited for the agony to subside, then continued. Above, muffled sounds filtered through layers of stone. Footsteps. Voices raised in confusion. They had discovered his absence. Let them search. The passage sloped downward. His memory returned in fragments. This exit led to a maintenance alley 3 blocks away. Rarely used. Barely monitored. He had chosen it for exactly that reason. But memory was not certain. Years changed cities. Cameras multiplied. Routes closed. He reached the end. A metal door, rusted at the hinges. No lock. Just a simple latch. He pressed his ear against it. Silence. His hand found the latch. Cold. Stiff from disuse. He pulled. The door opened with a low groan. Night air rushed in. Cool. Clean. The alley stretched before him, empty except for a parked van with no markings. Jun-suk stepped outside. The city hummed in the distance. Seoul continued, indifferent to his fall. He moved toward the alley's mouth, staying close to the wall. Each step reminded him of Incheon. The delays. The faces. The port where something had shifted in a way he could not name. Now he knew. They had been watching. Waiting. Timing his return. He reached the street. No cars. No pedestrians. The neighborhood slept. Behind him, the mansion stood 3 blocks away, lights now blazing in every window. They were tearing it apart. Jun-suk turned away. If he left, he lost everything. If he stayed, he died. The choice had already been made. He walked into the city, body aching, mind intact, carrying nothing but the question that followed him into the dark. Why had she known? And why had she stayed? By morning, the news spread quietly through the underworld. Park Jun-suk was dead. Nobody. No witnesses. But his phone was found in the Han River, waterlogged and destroyed. His guards had vanished. His accounts were frozen by internal order, the kind that only came from the top. His name was erased from the chain of command as if it had never existed. In a private room in Gangnam, 3 men toasted with expensive soju. To the future, one said. The others raised their glasses. No one mentioned Jun-suk's name. They didn't need to. Absence said enough. Across the city, shipments continued. Deals closed. Money moved. The machine kept running, smoother now without the friction of his authority. In Busan, a warehouse manager received new instructions. Different contacts. Same routes. He asked no questions. In Itaewon, a club owner updated his records. One name removed. Another added. The transition was seamless. Seoul adjusted. Power structure shifted like water filling a void. Natural. Inevitable. In a hotel basement near Jongno, a younger man sat across from 2 older ones. They spoke in low voices about expansion. Opportunities. Markets that had been restricted under the old regime. He was too cautious, the younger man said. Caution kept him alive, one of the older men replied. Until it didn't. They nodded. The conversation moved on. By afternoon, the mansion in Songbukdong was locked. Security is posted at the gates. Not to protect. To document. Every room photographed. Every safe is inventoried. Every connection is mapped. The maid was questioned briefly. She answered in monosyllables. Gave dates of employment. Confirmed her duties. Expressed appropriate shock. They dismissed her after 10 minutes. Furniture did not warrant suspicion. She left through the service entrance, carrying nothing but a small bag. No one followed her. In Mapogu, a journalist received an anonymous email. Attachments included financial records, meeting logs, Photos timestamped and geotagged. The subject line was empty. He opened the first file. Then the second. By the third, he was on the phone with his editor. In Gangnam, the men who had toasted that morning received calls. Urgent. Confused. Legal language they did not fully understand, but recognized as a threat. Audits. Investigations. Delays in shipments. Not seizures. Just paperwork. Nothing dramatic. Nothing violent. Just friction where there had been none. One of them hung up and stared at his phone. "It's probably nothing," he said. The others agreed. But privately, each of them wondered. In a small apartment in Dongdaemun, a phone buzzed once. A message arrived. No name. Just 2 words. They celebrated. The screen went dark. Outside, the city moved. Millions of people. Thousands of conversations. Seoul continued, louder than any single silence. But somewhere in that noise, someone had started counting. And in a place far from the capital, Park Jun-suk sat in a chair near a window, watching rain fall on unfamiliar streets. His body still hurt. Healing was slow. Real. Unforgiving. But his mind was untouched. Across from him, the maid poured tea. She was not wearing black anymore. 3 weeks passed. The shipments from Incheon arrived late. Not catastrophically. Just late enough to disrupt schedules. Buyers grew impatient. Contracts were renegotiated with less favorable terms. No one could pinpoint the cause. Customs cited routine inspections. The port authority mentioned staffing shortages. Logistics companies blamed weather delays that had not actually occurred. Each excuse was plausible. Each delay was small. But together, they formed a pattern. In Gangnam, the man who had proposed the toast sat in his office reviewing spreadsheets. Numbers that should have aligned did not. Profits dipped. Not enough to panic. Enough to notice. He made calls. His contacts assured him everything was fine. Temporary disruptions. Standard bureaucracy. He hung up, unconvinced. That afternoon, a license renewal was flagged. Minor discrepancy in documentation. Nothing serious. Just enough to require a hearing. The hearing was scheduled 4 weeks out. 4 weeks of operations have been paused. In Itaewon, the club owner received a visit from fire inspectors. They found violations. Outdated extinguishers. Improperly marked exits. Nothing warranted closure. Just fines. And mandatory upgrades. And follow-up inspections. He paid. But he remembered that 3 months ago, the same inspectors had found nothing wrong. In Busan, a warehouse manager was questioned about inventory discrepancies. Not by the police. By internal auditors whose presence he could not explain. They asked detailed questions. They took detailed notes. They left without accusations. But 2 days later, his direct supervisor was reassigned. No explanation given. The manager said nothing. But at night, he checked his phone more often. In Jongno, the younger man who had called Jun-suk too cautious found his bank accounts temporarily frozen. Administrative error, they said. It would be resolved within days. It took 11. When access was restored, nothing was missing. But someone had looked. He felt it. He mentioned it to no one. In Mapogu, the journalist published his first article. Carefully worded. Focused on financial irregularities in shipping logistics. No names. No direct accusations. Just questions. The article gained modest attention. Then a second journalist picked it up. Then a third. By the end of the week, legal teams were issuing statements. Denials. Clarifications. The more they clarified, the more questions emerged. In Gangnam, the three men met again. This time, no toasts. Someone is watching, one said. Who? Another asked. No one answered. They reviewed their operations. Found nothing overtly wrong. But the pressure was undeniable. Maybe it's unrelated, the younger man suggested. The others did not respond. They knew better. Pressure without a source. Disruption without attack. This was not law enforcement. This was something else. In Dongdaemun, a phone buzzed. A new message. First arrest tomorrow. Morning. The recipient read it twice. Then deleted it. In Seoul, the night settled over the city. Streetlights flickered on. Traffic continued. The underworld breathed, but shallower now. And far from the capital, in a place kept deliberately vague, Park Jun-suk lowered his teacup. The maid sat across from him, reviewing a tablet. They're getting nervous, she said. Good, he replied. She glanced up. The journalist will publish the second piece tomorrow. It includes a name. Jun-suk nodded slowly. Whose? She told him. His expression did not change. But his fingers tightened around the cup. That name had been at the table. That name had made promises. That name had signed documents Jun-suk had trusted without question. When? He asked. Morning edition. He stood. Walked to the window. Outside, rain continued. Behind him, the maid returned to her tablet. Neither spoke. But in Seoul, someone was about to wake up to a warrant. The house was small. Rural. Somewhere in Gangwon province, though Jun-suk had stopped asking for specifics weeks ago. The walls were thin. The heating is inconsistent. Nothing like Songbuk-dong. But it was quiet. And quiet meant invisible. He sat near the window, watching fog settle over distant hills. His ribs had stopped screaming. Now they only ached. Progress measured in breaths that no longer felt like punishment. The maid entered carrying a laptop. She no longer moved like staff. No deference. No hesitation. She pulled a chair across from him and sat without asking. The arrest happened an hour ago, she said. Jun-suk nodded. Clean. Very. The prosecutor had everything documented. Financial trails. Meeting records. Text messages. How? She met his eyes. Because I gave them everything. Silence. He had suspected. But suspicion and confirmation occupied different spaces. How long? He asked. How long what? How long have you been planning this? She set the laptop aside. 3 years. His jaw tightened. Since you started. Since before I started. He leaned back slowly. The chair creaked. Outside, a bird called. The sound felt distant. Irrelevant. Why? He asked. She did not answer immediately. Instead, she stood and walked to the small kitchen. Filled the kettle. Set it on the stove. When she spoke, her back was still to him. Because I knew this night would come. That's not an answer. It's the only one I can give. The kettle began to hiss. Jun-suk watched her. 3 years of invisibility. 3 years of calculated positioning. She had not been loyal by accident. She had been prepared. You knew who would betray me, he said. I suspected. And you stayed close. Yes. Why not warn me? She turned. Would you have believed me? He did not answer. Because she was right. 3 years ago, he had trusted the names she would have named. They had been tested. Proven. Embedded. A maid's warning would have meant nothing. The kettle whistled. She poured tea. Brought 2 cups to the table. You positioned yourself, Jun-suk said. You waited. You watched. Yes. That requires resources. She sipped her tea. It requires patience. And funding. She said nothing. He studied her face. No fear. No evasion. Just the same calm she had carried for 3 years. Who sent you? He asked. No one sent me. Then who are you? She smiled. Not warmth. Just acknowledgement. Someone who knows what happens when power gets comfortable. The answer settled between them like smoke. Jun-suk leaned forward. The person who betrayed me, he said. You told me they weren't the top. They weren't. Then who was? She set her cup down. Someone in Busan. Someone who has been building influence quietly while you consolidated Seoul. His fingers curled. A name. Not yet. Why? Because if I give you the name now, you'll act emotionally. And emotion is what they expect. He wanted to argue. But she was right again. They think you're dead, she continued. They think the arrests are law enforcement catching up. They don't know I exist. And they don't know you're still thinking. How long do we wait? Until they expose themselves. She pulled the laptop closer. Opened a file. The person who betrayed you is panicking. They've made 3 calls in the last hour. 2 to Busan. 1 to someone in Gangnam they shouldn't be talking to. Jun-suk leaned closer. You're monitoring them. I'm monitoring everyone. He stared at the screen. Call logs. Timestamps. Locations. How? She closed the laptop. Because I was never just a maid, Jun-suk. The use of his name landed differently now. She stood. Rest. Heal. Let them think silence means victory. She moved toward the door. There's something else, she said. Yes. She hesitated. For the first time since he had known her, genuine uncertainty crossed her face. The person who betrayed you didn't start this, she said. They were protecting someone higher. Someone who has been watching you for years. His pulse slowed. Who? I don't know yet. But they're careful. Patient. And they expected you to survive. The words hung in the air. What does that mean? She met his eyes. It means this was never about killing you. It was about seeing who you'd become without power. The door closed behind her. Jun-suk sat alone. Outside, fog thickened over the hills. And somewhere in Seoul, someone was making another call they shouldn't have. Jun-suk stared at the wall. 3 names. He had written them on paper, not digitally. Old habit. The kind formed when survival meant leaving no trace. The first name belonged to the man arrested that morning. His former logistics coordinator. Someone he had trusted with routes, contacts, and schedules. Someone who had been at the table in Gangnam. The second name belonged to the younger man. The one who had called him too cautious. Ambitious. Impatient. The kind who saw opportunity in every vacuum. But the third name remained blank. Someone in Busan. Someone patient. Someone who had built influence while Jun-suk consolidated Seoul. He traced the pattern backward. 6 months ago, a shipment had been delayed. Minor. Explainable. But it had required last-minute rerouting through Busan. 4 months ago, a contact in Incheon had been replaced. The new person was efficient. Professional. Connected to southern networks. 2 months ago, his cousin had mentioned interest from Busan investors. Legitimate businesses looking to expand north. Jun-suk had approved the meetings. Now he saw the thread. Slow. Methodical. Each move insignificant on its own. Together, they formed an encirclement. The maid entered without knocking. "They're moving," she said. "Who?" "The younger one. He just booked a flight to Busan." Jun-suk stood. "When?" "Tomorrow morning." She set a tablet on the table. "Flight details. Hotel reservation. Meeting location logged through intercepted calendar sync." "He's meeting someone," she said. "Someone who doesn't usually take meetings." "Name?" She shook her head. "The calendar just says, investment discussion. But the location matters." "Where?" "A private villa in Houndie. Registered to a shell company. The same shell company that owns 3 warehouses in Incheon." Jun-suk's jaw tightened. "My warehouses?" "Technically, yes. But ownership transferred 2 months ago." Quietly. "Through intermediaries." He looked at her. "How did I not know?" "Because the paperwork was filed while you were focused on the port delays. And because the person who filed it had signing authority." "Who?" "Your logistics coordinator. The one arrested this morning." The pieces aligned. The delays had been a distraction. While Jun-suk scrambled to maintain operations, ownership had shifted beneath him. "They were buying me out with my own assets," he said. "Yes." He walked to the window. The fog had lifted. Hills stretched toward the horizon, barren and indifferent. "What does the person in Busan want?" he asked. "Control without confrontation. They've been building parallel infrastructure for over a year. Using your routes. Your contacts. Your reputation. And when I became inconvenient, they removed you without violence. Clean. Quiet. The kind of move that doesn't trigger retaliation. Because retaliation required knowing who to retaliate against." Jun-suk turned. "They expected me to survive," he said. "Yes." "Why?" The maid leaned against the doorframe. "Because a dead martyr creates loyalty. A disappeared leader creates doubt. They wanted your organization intact, just transferred. And if I had died? Then they miscalculated. But you didn't. Which means they're either very confident or very prepared." Jun-suk returned to the table. Picked up the paper. Stared at the blank third name. "We need to know who they are," he said. "We will. Tomorrow, when the younger one meets them." "You're tracking him?" She smiled. "I've been tracking him since he booked the flight." Jun-suk set the paper down. "What happens after we know?" "That depends on what you want." He looked at her. "What do I want?" "Revenge. Justice. Survival. They're different goals." He considered. Revenge meant exposure. Public. Violent in its own way. Justice meant process. Legal. Slow. Survival meant disappearing permanently. "I want them to know," he said quietly. "Know what?" That silence was never surrender. The maid nodded. "Then we wait one more day." She left. Jun-suk sat alone with the 3 names. 2 filled. 1 blank. By tomorrow night, all 3 would be complete. And then the real decision would begin. The message arrived at dawn. Jun-suk's phone buzzed once. A number he did not recognize. A message stripped of metadata. "We should talk. You're harder to bury than expected." He stared at the screen. No threats. No demands. Just acknowledgement. The maid appeared in the doorway. "They know," she said. "How?" "The younger one didn't go to Busan." Jun-suk set the phone down. Where is he? Still in Seoul. He cancelled the flight 2 hours ago. Someone warned him. Who? She shook her head. Someone who knew we were watching. The realization settled slowly. They had been careful. Invisible. But somewhere, a gap had appeared. What do they want? Jun-suk asked. To negotiate. From a position they think is stronger. Yes. He picked up the phone again. Read the message a second time. Harder to bury than expected. Not impossible. Just harder. The distinction mattered. Should I respond? He asked. The maid considered. If you respond, you confirm you're alive. If you don't, they'll escalate to force confirmation. Escalate how? By targeting the few things you still care about. He looked at her. She met his gaze without flinching. I can handle myself, she said. But there are others. Your cousin. The driver who disappeared. People who were loyal before this happened. Jun-suk's fingers tightened around the phone. Where are they? Safe. For now. But only because no one is looking. He set the phone down again. What would you do? He asked. I'd respond. But carefully. Saying what? She moved to the table. Pulled the laptop closer. Say nothing that gives location. Nothing that confirms weakness. Just enough to make them think you're considering their offer. What offer? They'll make one. People like this always do. Compromise. Partial control. A seat at a smaller table. And if I refuse? Then they'll know you're not negotiating. And negotiation is the only reason to stay alive. He understood. Survival required appearing willing to bend. Revenge required them to believe he had. He typed a response. I'm listening. 2 words. No punctuation. No emotion. He showed it to the maid. She nodded. Send it. He did. The reply came within minutes. Tomorrow. Neutral location. You choose. Jun-suk read it twice. They're giving me control of the location, he said. Because they're confident, it doesn't matter. They have numbers. Resources. And they think you're alone. I am alone. She smiled. No. You're just small enough to be underestimated. He considered the message. A meeting meant exposure. Risk. The possibility of violence. But it also meant confirmation. He would finally see the face behind the third name. Where should I choose? He asked. The maid leaned back. Somewhere public enough that they can't act recklessly. Private enough that conversation can happen. And close enough to Seoul that canceling would reveal fear. Suggestions? A restaurant in Itaewon. Midday. Upstairs private room. Multiple exits. He typed the location. Sent it. The response was immediate. Agreed. Come alone. Jun-suk set the phone down. They think I'm desperate, he said. Let them. She stood. What happens if they try to kill me? He asked. They won't. Not yet. They want to know what you know first. Who helped you? How you survived. And after they know. Then it depends on what you tell them. She moved toward the door. Get some rest. Tomorrow you'll need to perform. Perform. She paused. Weakness. Confusion. Just enough hope to keep them talking. The door closed. Jun-suk sat alone. Outside, morning light broke over the hills. In Seoul, someone was preparing for a conversation they believed they controlled. They were wrong. But they wouldn't know that until it was too late. Jun-suk leaned back. For the first time since the night he came home late, he allowed himself a thin, controlled smile. The game had shifted. And patience had always been his strongest weapon. The restaurant in Itaewon was exactly what Jun-suk had described. Public enough. Private enough. 3 exits. He arrived early. Took the stairs slowly. His ribs protested, but he kept his face neutral. The private room was on the 2nd floor. Western-style table. 6 chairs. Windows overlooking the street. He sat facing the door. Waited. 15 minutes later, footsteps approached. The younger man entered first. The one who had called Jun-suk too cautious. He wore confidence like expensive cologne. Too much. Behind him came someone older. Mid-50s. Gray hair. Tailored suit. Calm eyes that measured the room before settling on Jun-suk. The third name. No one else entered. The older man sat across from Jun-suk. The younger one remained standing near the door. "You look well," the older man said. "Considering." Jun-suk said nothing. "I'm glad you agreed to meet," the older man continued. "This situation has become unnecessarily complicated." "Has it?" "Your disappearance created uncertainty. Uncertainty creates opportunity for misunderstanding." Jun-suk leaned back slightly. "Is that what this was? Misunderstanding?" The older man smiled. "Transitions are never clean. But they can be managed. With cooperation." "What kind of cooperation?" "The productive kind. You have experience. Connections. Knowledge that remains valuable. We're not interested in waste. Just control. Shared control. A partnership." Jun-suk glanced at the younger man. Still standing. Still watching. "And him?" Jun-suk asked. "He represents the future. Ambition. Growth. He represents impatience." The older man's smile thinned. "Perhaps. But impatience drives markets. You know this." Jun-suk returned his attention to the older man. "What exactly are you offering?" "Consultation. Advisory role. 20% of the operations you previously controlled. Clean transition. No retaliation. In exchange for silence. Cooperation. And information about who helped you disappear." There it was. The real question. Jun-suk let the silence extend. Outside, traffic hummed. The restaurant continued below, oblivious. "I don't know what you mean," he said finally. The older man leaned forward. "Someone helped you. Someone with resources. Skills. Access to information we've kept carefully restricted. Maybe I helped myself." "No. You were injured. Isolated. The logistics alone required assistance." Jun-suk met his eyes. "And if I refuse to answer?" The older man sat back. "Then we reevaluate. This offer expires when this meeting ends. After that, uncertainty becomes a problem we solve differently. Not a threat. Just observation." Jun-suk nodded slowly. "I need time to consider." "How much time?" "A week." The older man shook his head. 2 days. After that, the situation changes." He stood. The younger man opened the door. "We're not enemies, Jun-suk," the older man said. "We're businessmen. Think practically." They left. Jun-suk remained seated. 5 minutes passed. The maid's voice came through the small earpiece he wore. "Did you get enough?" He touched his collar. The recording device was invisible. Embedded in the button. "Yes," he said quietly. Good. Leave now. The prosecutor will have everything within the hour. Jun-suk stood. Descended the stairs. Exited through the back. A car waited. Not the maid. Someone else. Someone he didn't recognize. He got in. The car pulled into traffic. Behind him, Itaewon continued. Restaurants filled. People laughed. No one noticed the surveillance van parked 2 blocks away. Or the equipment inside. Or the prosecutors who had recorded every word spoken in that upstairs room. By evening, warrants were drafted. By midnight, phones were seized. By morning, the older man's name appeared in headlines. Not accusations. Just questions. Financial ties to shell companies. Meetings with individuals under investigation. Patterns of acquisition that coincided suspiciously with enforcement gaps. No proof yet. Just enough smoke to demand an investigation. In Gangnam, lawyers mobilized. Statements were prepared. Denials issued. But the questions multiplied. Another journalist picked up the thread. Then another. The younger man's flight records surfaced. Meetings in Busan. Connections to warehouses in Incheon. Nothing illegal on its face. But context changed the interpretation. Pressure built without accusation. Scrutiny without arrest. The kind that made business partners nervous. Made investors cautious. Made the subordinates quiet. In Busan, the older man made calls. Tried to contain the narrative. But containment required knowing the source. And the source remained invisible. 3 days after the meeting, a second arrest occurred. Not the older man. Someone adjacent. A lawyer who had filed the warehouse transfers. Small pieces. Careful moves. Nothing dramatic. Just inevitable. In Gangwon province, Jun-suk watched the news without sound. The maid sat nearby, reviewing messages. They're panicking, she said. Good. The older one is trying to identify who leaked. Will he? No. The trail leads to multiple sources. Journalists. Prosecutors. Anonymous tips. No single point of origin. Jun-suk nodded. When does it end? She looked at him. When do you want it to end? He considered. Revenge would require exposure. His survival is revealed. His hand showed. Justice required patience. Letting the system he had once circumvented do the work. Not yet, he said. She returned to her tablet. Outside, evening settled. And in Seoul, someone realized too late that silence had never meant absence. Just strategy. 6 weeks after the night Jun-suk came home late, the city reached equilibrium. The older man was not arrested. Not officially. But his operations slowed. Partners distanced. Meetings cancelled. The kind of isolation that happens when trust erodes faster than evidence accumulates. He remained free. But not powerful. The younger man disappeared from Seoul. Rumors placed him in Busan. Others said further. No one confirmed. His ambition had outpaced his patience. The logistics coordinator, who had been arrested first, accepted a plea agreement. Details were not made public. But 3 other names emerged from his testimony. None of them was Jun-suk's. In Songbuk-dong, the mansion remained empty. Security has been reduced to basic monitoring. The property was listed quietly. No buyers emerged. Ghosts lingered in valuable real estate. In Gangwon province, Jun-suk packed a single bag. The maid watched from the doorway. Where will you go? She asked. I don't know yet. Will you come back? He paused. To Seoul. To any of it. He considered the question. The weight of empire. The cost of control. The price of trust. No, he said finally. She nodded. Good. He turned to face her. What about you? I have other work. For who? She smiled. For people who need someone to clean houses. The answer was deliberate. Evasive. He accepted it. Thank you, he said. For what? For staying when everyone else left. She met his eyes. I didn't stay. I arrived specifically for that night. The honesty landed cleanly. Why? He asked. Because someone needed to. That's not an answer. It's the only one I can give. The same words as before. He picked up his bag. Will I see you again? Probably not. Should I try to find you? No. He nodded. They stood in silence. Not uncomfortable. Just complete. She walked him to the door. Outside, a car waited. Not hers. Arranged through channels he would never trace. He got in. The car pulled away. In the rearview mirror, the small house disappeared behind the hills. The maid stood in the doorway for a moment longer. Then went inside. She had 3 more calls to make. 2 journalists. 1 prosecutor. Then she would disappear as thoroughly as she had appeared. Furniture left no footprints. In Seoul, the underworld adjusted. New names rose. Old alliances reformed. The machine continued, smaller now, more cautious. Power decentralized. No one mentioned Park Jun-suk. Not because they forgot. Because silence had become policy. In a small apartment in Yongsan, Jun-suk's cousin received a message. No name. Just an account number and a password. Enough money to start over. Somewhere quiet. He stared at the screen for a long time. Then deleted the message. But he remembered the number. In Busan, the older man sat in his villa overlooking Haeundae Beach. His phone rang less frequently now. When it did, conversations were brief. Transactional. Empty of the deference he had once commanded. He had not lost everything. Just enough. He poured whiskey. Watched the ocean. Somewhere, someone was still watching him. He felt it. But he would never know who. In a cafe in Hongdae, a journalist opened her laptop. Another anonymous email. More documents. These traced connections she had not previously considered. She began writing. The pattern continued. Drip by drip. Question by question. In Gangwon province, the small house stood empty. The maid had left no trace. No forwarding address. No final message. Just clean counters and made beds. Professional to the end. On a train heading south, Jun-suk watched Korea pass outside the window. Mountains. Rivers. Cities that did not know his name. His ribs no longer ached. His hand no longer trembled. He was no one now. And for the first time in years, that felt like victory. The train continued. Behind him, Seoul receded. Ahead, nothing waited. No empire. No enemies. No obligations. Just distance. And silence. The kind that could not be misunderstood. He closed his eyes. Outside, the country moved. Millions of people. Thousands of stories. It was finished. Or so he chose to believe. But in Seoul, a phone buzzed. A message arrived. No name. Just coordinates. And a single line. He's not the only one who survived. The screen went dark. Somewhere, someone saved the message. And began preparing. Because some silences are not endings. They are intermissions. And the next act was already being written.